Here I've got peaks from Mutable Instruments, and I'll be going through the features of the module, including the 4 standard modes and the 4 hidden features within the module. This module packs a lot of functionality into quite a small space, and it's still really simple to use. It's already got me thinking that I need to get hold of 2 of these, so let's get stuck into some patches. Starting with the first mode on peaks, we'll look at the envelopes. One channel is in use at the minute, sending an envelope into the sync mode on braids. It can go from tight pops and clicks to nice and long ADSR envelopes. The actual time the envelopes operate at is from 0.2 of a millisecond through to 12 seconds. In standard mode we get 2 full ADSRs, but they share the same settings, although they are triggered independently. Rolling back the cutoff on my filter, which has got braids going into it, the second envelope is now going to open the filter while the first still goes to modulate braids. So changes here are affecting both envelopes. Going into split mode, we get dual AD envelopes. So attack and decay on channel 1, and these work like triggered envelopes, not a gated envelope, so the decay actually has some release to it as well. Plugging in the second envelope, we've got another independent AD envelope on the bottom 2 knobs. Holding the top button, we go into expert mode, which will make this light flash. A single flash means read it in channel 1, and a double flash means read it in channel 2. And we get a full ADSR on channel 1. And pressing the button now, it flashes twice, indicating that we're editing channel 2, giving us 2 full independent ADSRs. Moving on to LFO mode now, the top knob is the LFO rate, which moves the audio rate right down to slow LFO ranges. The actual range is 32 seconds through to 100 Hz. The second knob down is the wave shape, which starts at a sine wave, followed by a triangle, then a square in the middle, a stepped triangle, and then a random wave, which is like a sample and hold. Sticking with the sine wave for now, the third knob down is variation in the waveform. To the left it brings in these spikes and inaccuracies, and all the way to the right you get some folds and peaks in the sine wave as well. Moving on to triangles, the variation knob adjusts a rise and fall time. All the way to the left is a saw wave, triangle wave in the middle, and a ramp wave on the far right. With a square wave, the waveform variation becomes a pulse width control. With the step triangle, which is like a pyramid, the variation controls the steps in the wave, which is like a bit crusher, restricting the amount of values from a single value like a square all the way to the left to smoother, higher step rates on the right. With a random out, we get classic sample and hold style waves all the way to the left. The output becomes more like a triangle wave in the middle, and then a much more slewed and bendy, curvy, random wave all the way to the right. The fourth knob becomes a waveform phase control, which adjusts the phase of the LFOs when it receives a trigger to reset the LFO. I'm in tap mode now, which is a clock tap LFO. The top knob becomes a depth control, which is great for adjusting the amplitude of your modulation. Knob 2 is a wave select, And like normal LFO mode, this has sine, triangle, square, step triangle and random. Sticking with the triangle, we have the same waveform variation on the third knob as we do with the LFO mode. We also get the phase variation on the fourth knob as well. Clocking the second channel now, this is going to be at half the speed because I've got a divided clock source in comparison to what's going into channel 1. Going into expert mode, we get full control over both Tap-LFOs. In split mode, we've got control over the waveform and the waveform variation, and these are still triggered independently. Instead of a clock source, you can also tap the button next to the trigger inputs to use a tap button to actually clock the LFO at your own rate. I'm in the fourth mode of peaks now, which is 808 style drums. My trigger is going through a Mutable Instruments branches module, but for now that's just passing the trigger to channel 1, which is the kick. The top knob is the frequency or the pitch. The second knob becomes the frequency modulation and tone control, and you can hear that pitch bend that it's adding to the sound. The third knob is the attack. And the fourth knob is a decay control. So there's a wide range of kick sounds in there between those four knobs. Moving on to the snare, the top knob is the pitch and frequency. Frequency modulation and tone on knob 2. The noise and attack on knob 3. And a decay on knob 4. Moving the branches module so it varies the triggers between the two channels now and speeding up the clock, here's a mix of those sounds. Check out my branches overview, which I've linked in the description below if you want to see more of that module. In normal mode, the controls affect both channels at the same time. In split mode, we get the bass drum's attack and decay on the first two knobs, and on the snare, we get the snare's tone and the snare's snap in split mode. And this split mode is tuned to the original 808 style sounds. Moving on to the hidden modes now, which are accessed by pressing and holding the mode select button, which is the second button down. The first mode gives us two 4-step sequences. In split mode, this becomes two 2-step sequences, and in expert mode, it gives us fully independent control over the two 4-step sequences. I have channel 1 going into my quantizer here, creating an arpeggio style pattern. This is going into braids. We can also split the output, so one copy of the signal is going to the quantizer, and the other is also modulating the timbre on braids, so we're getting some per note timbre modulation. Going into expert mode now and onto channel 2, I'm going to trigger and clock this 8 times slower than the first channel. So we'll get 2 full sequences from channel 1, and then channel 2 will move on the next step. So I can use channel 2 here as a transposing slower sequence by mixing these outs together before the quantizer. Again, we can split this into the colour modulation of braids. So as well as working this way, these could be two separate sequences for different parts of a patch or two different patches running together. You could also use a sequential switch to move between these two outputs and clock them at the same rate or with different rhythms to get an 8-step sequence. Onto hidden mode 2 now. This is a trigger delay and repeater. The top knob controls the delay time. I've got a noise patch being triggered to show the incoming clock to peaks, and the output of peaks is triggering a patch with braids in chord mode, so you can hear the differences between the trigger going in and the trigger coming out as we change the settings. Turning up the delay, you can hear these two sounds separate from each other. The fourth knob controls the repeats of the trigger, and knob 3 controls the spread of these triggers, so the time between the repeats. Knob 2 here is the pulse width of all the triggers, which would be great for an ADSR gate input, but in this specific patch it has no effect. Here I have a zappy kick style sound acting as an audible clock, and this is being triggered by the clock that's going into peaks, which is triggering a snare sound from peaks' output going into the second channel of peaks for this actual snare. This is hidden mode 3, which is a trigger stream randomizer, with knobs 2, 3 and 4 all the way to the left and knob 1 all the way to the right. Knob 1 acts as a probability that the trigger will actually pass. So you can hear the kick trigger over time and the snare not triggering every time, depending on the probability settings. Knob 2 is the probability that a trigger will repeat. Knob 3 is the time between these repeated triggers. It will do very fast audio rate style re-triggering. Knob 4 is a random jitter style control that adds some shifts in the repeats to the sound. The probability functions in a similar way to a single channel of branches with an on-off style output rather than an A or a B output. If you like this sort of functionality, make sure to check out branches from Mutable Instruments as well. I'm in hidden mode 4 now, which is extra drum sounds. This is an Anushri style synth drum generator for creating kicks, snares and all sorts of percussion. The top knob controls the pitch. The second knob controls the pitch envelope and the click and attack. The third knob controls the decay. And the fourth knob provides some waveform variation, slight distortion, sound and noise. So depending on which channel we trigger, for now these will sound the same. In split mode, which I'm going to vary the triggers into through branches, the split mode puts the two channels into their respective sweet spots for a kick and a snare sound, and the two knobs work as meta knobs controlling multiple parameters to give you a synth kick and a synth snare. In expert mode, as with the other modes, we get full access to the 4 controls for each sound. So this is channel 1 and I'll create a kick style sound. Onto channel 2 now to create something more snare-like. Here's a little extra bit with a drum mode that I didn't look at in the previous part of the video. The snare drum can actually turn into a hi-hat when you turn up knobs 2 and 3 all the way to the right. I'm in expert mode now on peaks and I want to look at the Tap-LFO and its learning function. I've got a snare drum on channel 2 of peaks, which I'm using just so you can hear the triggers. This is like an audible click so you can hear what's going on. I've I've got the chord mode selected on braids, which is going into a filter, and I've got the LFO, the Tap-LFO in peaks' output, moving the filter's cutoff. So you can hear the snare, which is the trigger on the way in, and that's going to be on each trigger, and then also the rhythm that the LFO movement is providing on the filter, so you can see how they line up. The Tap-LFO on peaks is a much more intelligent Tap-LFO than just a simple steady clocked LFO. It can actually learn skips, shuffles, swing and changing rhythms in the triggers that are coming in. Once peaks has noticed a repeat in the pattern, it then learns that incoming rhythm and adapts the LFO's output as a pattern following that trigger. It creates full LFO cycles and not just simple hard resets like a standard analog LFO. And it's quite an exciting feature, I feel, that deserves a bit more attention, so we'll go through that in detail and show how that works. Starting with adding some shuffle and swing to the clock, you'll hear peaks catch up as the trigger pattern changes. So almost instantly, it didn't take peaks long to learn that pattern. I'm going to add some skips into the beat now. And again, it didn't take peaks long to learn that pattern and adapt its output. I'm going to speed up the clock now and change the swing amount. So moving on to peaks channel 1, I'm going to move the waveform variation. And then we'll change the beat skipping in the trigger source now. And you can hear that once that pattern repeated a couple of times, peaks had caught up and it had learnt that pattern to match the incoming triggers. So like the other Mutable Instruments modules that I've got, it's a massively feature-packed module that offers way more than I'd imagined, with envelopes, LFOs, intelligent clocked LFOs, drums, and the 4 hidden modes, which is the step sequencer, trigger delay and repeater, trigger stream randomizer, and some further drum sounds. It does a lot in quite a small and really simple to use package. I hope the videos outline the features and some of the possibilities of the module. Check out my branches overview at the link in the description, as I've used that through this video. Hit like and subscribe, and feel free to comment and ask any further questions.